What actually separates the people who stay broke from the people who quietly become wealthy? Most people guess salary, intelligence, or plain luck. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Almost every self-made millionaire, from Wall Street to Main Street, shares one specific piece of financial knowledge that has nothing to do with how much money they bring home each month. It's not a secret stock tip, and it's not a get-rich scheme. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what that is. Most people spend their whole lives trading hours for dollars. A paycheck lands, bills get paid, groceries get bought, and whatever's left disappears into something that felt urgent at the time. Then it starts over again on the 1st of the next month. Nothing about that pattern grows on its own. A rideshare driver working a Friday night shift earns exactly as much as the hours logged, not $1 more. That's the entire model most of us were taught. Work equals income, and income equals survival. Wealthy people play a different game entirely. At some point, they stop asking only, "How much can I earn this month?" and start asking, "How can this money start earning on its own?" That shift doesn't happen by accident, and it's not about making more. It's about what happens to the dollars once they arrive, and that's where this gets interesting. A lot of people assume wealth shows up in one dramatic moment: a lottery ticket, a startup that goes viral, a single stock pick that multiplies overnight. Movies love that story because it's exciting, and it makes wealth look like something that happens to you, not something you build. Ask someone how they imagine becoming a millionaire, and most won't mention decades of unglamorous investing. They'll mention the moment everything changed instantly, in one dramatic swing of luck. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most real fortunes were never built that way. They were built slowly, through the same unremarkable mechanism repeated over and over, year after year, without a single headline-worthy moment attached to it. There's nothing flashy about it, which is probably exactly why so few people talk about it, and why almost nobody bothers explaining what that mechanism actually is. Simple interest is easy to picture. You get paid a fixed amount every year, based only on what you started with. Deposit $1,000 at 5%, and you'll collect $50 every single year, not a penny more, no matter how long it sits there. Compound interest works differently, and this is the part that changes everything. Instead of earning only on your original deposit, you also earn on the interest already collected. That $50 gets added to the pile, so next year you're earning on $1,050, not just $1,000. Picture a checking account balance that recalculates itself every year, always growing from a slightly bigger number than before. That tiny difference barely matters after 1 year. Give it several decades and it stops looking like a rounding error. It becomes the reason some people retire early and others don't. Strip away the intimidating formula, and compound interest really only runs on 3 ingredients: how much money you start with, how fast that money grows each year, and how long you leave it completely alone. That's it. No secret 4th variable. No insider knowledge required. Most people obsess over the 2nd ingredient, chasing a slightly higher return, switching accounts, trying to beat the market by a percentage point or two. It feels productive. It rarely moves the needle much. The 3rd ingredient does the heaviest lifting, and almost nobody treats it that way. Time isn't glamorous. It doesn't make for an exciting conversation at a barbecue. But stretched out over enough years, time quietly outperforms almost every clever strategy people spend their energy chasing instead. And the next scene shows exactly how dramatic that difference actually looks. Picture $10,000 invested at 10% a year, then left completely untouched. After 10 years, that grows to roughly $26,000. Solid, but nothing that would make anyone stop scrolling. After 20 years, the number jumps to almost $67,000. Same starting amount, same growth rate. The only thing that changed was time, and the results already look like a different investment altogether. Push it to 30 years, and it crosses $170,000. At 40 years, it's well past $450,000, all from that same original $10,000. The early years look almost boring on purpose. That flatness isn't a sign something's broken. It's the quiet buildup before the curve bends upward in a way most people never stick around long enough to see. There's a reason compound growth feels so counterintuitive. The human brain evolved to think in straight lines, not curves. Ask someone to estimate what doubling a penny every day for 30 days looks like, and almost everyone guesses low, sometimes by millions of dollars. That's not a math failure. It's how our brains are wired. We're built to notice steady, linear change, a paycheck that arrives every 2 weeks, a commute that takes the same 40 minutes each day, not growth that stays flat for years and then suddenly explodes. Compound interest doesn't play by those rules. It moves quietly for a long stretch, and then, seemingly out of nowhere, it accelerates in a way that feels almost unfair. Understanding that mismatch between how your brain thinks and how money actually grows changes everything about what happens next. Because exponential growth looks flat in the beginning, a lot of people assume nothing is happening and pull the plug way too soon. A market dip shows up, the account balance barely moves after 2 years of contributions, and it starts to feel like the whole thing isn't working. So people sell. They stop contributing during a rough month and never quite restart. They chase something that promises faster results, usually right before the slow thing they abandoned would have started paying off. Here's what almost nobody realizes in that moment. The flat part isn't a warning sign. It's the setup. Most of the growth in a compound curve happens in the final stretch, not the first one. Walking away early doesn't just slow things down. It usually means missing the exact part that made the wait worthwhile. Warren Buffett didn't become wealthy primarily from picking brilliant stocks in his 50s and 60s. The overwhelming majority of his fortune was built from money that had been compounding since his 20s, quietly stacking on itself for well over half a century. Charlie Munger built his approach around a similar idea. Find good investments, then get out of the way, and let time do the work instead of constantly tinkering. John D. Rockefeller reinvested profits back into his holdings for decades rather than spending them, which is a big part of why his fortune outlasted him by generations. None of them shared a secret formula for picking winners. What they shared was patience most people don't have, and a willingness to start early and simply not interfere. That raises an uncomfortable question about what starting early is actually worth in dollars. Picture two people. One starts investing $200 a month at age 25. The other waits, gets serious about it at 35, and invests $300 a month instead. 50% more every single month, trying to make up for lost time. Run both accounts to age 65 at an 8% average return, and the person who started at 25, investing less money overall, still ends up with significantly more than the person who started later and contributed more. That's not a rounding error. That's the cost of 10 quiet years, and no amount of extra monthly effort later fully closes that gap. It's an uncomfortable number to sit with, especially for anyone who's been telling themselves there's plenty of time to start later. The market never asked either of them to be brilliant. It only asked one of them to begin sooner. It's not the market that wrecks most people's long-term returns. It's their own hands, reaching in at exactly the wrong moment. Panic selling during a downturn locks in a loss that would have likely recovered given enough time. Pulling money out for something that feels urgent right now resets the clock on whatever growth had already built up. Constantly trying to guess when to buy and when to sell usually means missing the handful of best days that drive most of a decade's returns. Every one of these interruptions costs more than it seems to in the moment, because compound growth isn't just about the money removed, it's about everything that money would have continued generating for years afterward. The single biggest threat to most portfolios isn't a crash, it's impatience wearing a disguise that looks like caution. Most people, when money arrives, ask one question almost automatically: how much can I spend? It's not a character flaw, it's just the question our culture trains us to ask first, every single time. Wealthy people tend to ask a different one instead: how much can I invest? Same paycheck, same starting point, completely different instinct guiding what happens next. That single reframe seems small in any given month. A grocery run, a car payment, a night out, none of it looks life-changing in isolation. But stretched across 20 or 30 years, that one habitual question, asked consistently instead of occasionally, is often the entire difference between retiring comfortably and working well into your 60s out of necessity. It's not about earning more, it's about which question becomes automatic, and that's a choice available starting with your very next paycheck. In the early years, a compounding investment can feel almost insulting in how little it seems to do. Contribute steadily for 2 or 3 years, check the balance, and it barely looks different from what was put in. Then something shifts. The balance doubles. Not long after, relative to how long the first doubling took, it doubles again. Eventually, the account grows more in a single year than it grew across the entire previous decade combined. The same account, the same strategy, just further along the curve. Nothing dramatic happened to trigger that shift. No lucky break, no sudden change in strategy. The math was always going to bend this way. It just took long enough that most people had already stopped paying attention. That's exactly why so few people ever get to witness their own curve bend. None of this requires a finance degree or a lucky break. It requires a handful of habits repeated without much drama for a very long time. Invest something every single month, even a modest amount, before it has the chance to get spent on something else. Reinvest dividends instead of pocketing them, so the snowball keeps rolling instead of getting interrupted. Keep costs and fees low, since a difference of even 1% a year quietly eats into decades of growth. Think in decades, not months. Resist the urge to sell out of fear during a rough stretch. And as income grows, a raise, a new job, a side hustle taking off, increase contributions instead of letting lifestyle expand to match every extra dollar. None of these steps are complicated. What they require is the one thing most financial advice conveniently leaves out: consistency, held for longer than feels comfortable. Most people spend their entire lives believing they need to earn a fortune to become wealthy. The truth is quieter than that, and honestly a lot more forgiving. They simply need to understand how money behaves once it's put to work. Every dollar invested is an employee that never clocks out, never calls in sick, and never asks for a raise. It works while you sleep, while you're stuck in traffic, during the years you forget the account even exists. It doesn't need motivation. It doesn't need supervision. It just needs to be left alone. Wealth built this way almost never arrives through one dramatic moment. No lucky break, no overnight windfall, no headline worth sharing. It arrives through thousands of small, unremarkable decisions, repeated without much fanfare, compounding quietly in the background, until one day, seemingly out of nowhere, they no longer look small at all. That day comes for anyone patient enough to wait for it. Before you go, if breakdowns like this one are useful to you, follow the channel. This is exactly the kind of thing we dig into here, and there's more where this came from. Now here's a question worth sitting with. If you invested $10,000 today and never touched it again, where do you think you'd land in 30 years? Drop your answer in the comments. And while you're there, let me know where you're actually starting from. Brand new to investing or already several years in.